So, revolutionizing developer experience through documentation-driven development. Whew, what a long title. I'm tired already. Um, I saw this on Reddit. It made me laugh so hard, I just had to share. So, I'm not going to ask how many of us have ever been in this situation. Nah, won't ask. Some of us might see this and say, no, there should be documentation. But it might be interesting to know that our perspectives might change depending on the scenario. Let's take a few examples. Scenario one, I need to know how this piece of code works. What's the first question that comes to your mind? Where is documentation? I need to know how this abstraction works or how to use this abstraction. What comes to your mind? Where is documentation? Right? I'd like to change our current approach to job scheduling, but I need to understand why we chose this approach in the first place. What comes to your mind? For some, is who can I ask? For some, is who can I talk to? For others, maybe those in my group, will be Git lens. Who did that? And then we find that person, and then we ask the person. The purpose of this talk is to show us that developer experience greatly improves, gets better, if we can ask the same question in all of these scenarios. Where is documentation? My name is Abiodun Olowode, AB for short, and I invite you to take this DDD journey with me. As devs, when we hear DDD, what's the first thing that comes to our minds? Speak out, it's a conversation. What's the first thing? Thank you, domain-driven design. However, in the context of this talk, when we hear DDD, it does mean documentation-driven development. So without further ado, what is DDD? In 4 short words, document first, code later. What does this mean? This means that before you go into the implementation of a solution, I see everybody laughing like, really, really, document first, code later? I expected that, that's why I have this. I knew, I could predict. So yeah, but why? Why would anyone want to do that? Like, it sounds so funny. This ideology is proposing the fact that before you implement a solution, you take some time out to document your thought process, the hows and the whys of the solution that you propose, or the several viable solutions. These hows and the whys could include ERDs, UMLs, architecture diagrams, and even pseudocode. And then iterate over this until you find the solution that works the best. And after that, we go into code. Why? Interesting question. Aside the fact that clarity in explanation often leads to clarity in implementation, I'm going to take us through a few extra reasons why. The first one, effective collaboration. With DDD, you can invite others to validate your solution, to point you in alternative directions that you probably haven't considered. You can actually gain from others' expertise this way. Why is DDD effective for this? I could use Slack, no? I could just ask on Slack. Well, this was me about a year ago. Yeah, I actually pixelated some parts so as not to bore you, but I come on Slack on this fateful day, March 2nd, 2023, and I go, hi everyone. And I state a few things, and I write a GraphQL query of what I'm expecting to achieve. And at the end, as you can see, I say, we have a few ideas we're exploring, but we would like to hear fresh ideas, and maybe even edge cases we have not considered. Let's discuss. Thank you. And then what happens? How many replies do you see? No, it's a conversation. How many do you see? Too many. Thank you. Thank you. Way too many. So we have 291 replies. This is a Slack message. What happened? Don't ask me. Or you can ask me later, and I'll tell you how this actually ended. But I brought this out to say something. 3 things could actually happen. Let's assume that we have a dev team with devs from different time zones. So let's say you are the devs that work 4 hours after I start. So by 8 a.m., I put up that. And by 12 p.m., you start work. So let's assume that the replies at that time could be about 150 replies. Now, a poll. How many people here would see this and scroll past because you assume 150 replies must be solved? How many people would just scroll past? Thanks for the honesty. How many people would look at this, find it interesting, and want to actually collaborate, but cannot bear the cognitive load of reading 150 replies? Beautiful. So we are effective collaborators, but we don't like pain. Yeah. So we always gauge the pain in nah. Just scroll past. Now, how many people here, please be honest, would ignore the 150 replies because I'm such a great collaborator and I so love to help people? I'll just put my reply on the thread there without going through the 150 replies because maybe that's just what they need. How many people? Be honest. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please let's put our hands together for him for that honesty. So, what are the things that could actually happen? For the set that walked past, assuming that it's solved, I get to lose out on your expertise because of an assumption that's probably not true. dx going down. You get to lose out on the opportunity to collaborate because you cannot bear the cognitive load. So you actually want to help, but you can't. dx going down. And now, for the person who says, I'm such a good collaborator, I'm going to help either way. And then you come on this thread after 150 replies, and you put your own idea, you're likely to create noise. Because what if what you said has been said 3 hours ago, and we are past that point? So we will just say, dude, just read. And so the X for that person goes down because he's like, I just wanted to help. And for us, we are like, why can't you just read? So the X is going down for everybody. But DDD does you one better. If you had a document where you wrote all of this down, and then I just said, everybody, here's the link. Please, can you go and check? As at the time you come 4 hours after, you meet the iterated version. And then you can actually help from the point where it is, not from 150 replies ago, right? So everybody gets to actually collaborate effectively. Something happens with that. You get a faster feedback loop. How? I'm going to use another example. Surprise, surprise, of who? Me. When I newly joined the X team, my first task was to create a data table. Now, this is how our docs look, so I just took a screenshot. I was on the back end, and Mark was on the front end. What is this table for? This was supposed to be a tool and abstraction for all the devs. We have about 160 developers, and we were supposed to create this table that devs would use to present their data. And all you needed to do was pass a GraphQL query. And then we would give you pagination, sorting, filtering, search, exports out of the box. Magic. Like you didn't need to do nada. Just call this abstraction, send your query, and it's all done. We present everything to you on a table. This was my first task on the DX team. It was very interesting. So I went the right route, which was CD. And for the part of sorting, I said, what do I think is going to happen here? And then in my doc, I write this. It is worthy of note that these sorting parameters need to correspond to existing columns on the DB table in question. Worthy assumption. Because if you want to sort, that field should be present somewhere, no? I'm not crazy, right? It should be present on a table. But then Ruben says, just to give you information about the current uses of sorting in ATS, we are currently sorting by a candidate status which does not exist on the DB at all. Whoa. I already created a solution that works, but with the assumption that these fields were present on a table. And if I was building this for 160 devs, I had to serve every use case. For the filtering part, I said, I'm just going to create a new DSL. It will solve all the world's problems, and it's just going to have a field, comparator, and a value. The field could be something like first name, comparator, in, equal, not equal to, and all of that, and then you pass the value. Pao, our CTO at the time, says, is this a new DSL? We have a filtering DSL for reports, another one for SQL, and now this, can we unify? At this point, I'm like, but, imagine that I already went ahead and created the solution. So let's say I spent 2 to 3 days creating this new DSL. And then on my PR, this very interesting, beautiful, clean code, high quality PR, Pao comes to that PR and says, this. How would you feel? I know for me, I'll be like, really, Pao? Really? After all this work? That's the X going down right there. Because I've put in so much work and so much time. But there's no way Pao could have known, because Pao doesn't read minds. There's no way anyone could have helped me save that time if I didn't put everything down in that doc. So that's how DDD helps you right there. Effective collaboration and a faster feedback loop. You don't need to put in the time that you could have saved. But with all of this comes accelerated development. So that means because I have iterated, I've gotten feedback, and now I have my perfect solution, I can go ahead and code faster, implement my solution faster. Abraham Lincoln said something, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. This deliberate action of actually documenting your thought process and collaborating over it and iterating is, in essence, the sharpening of your axe before the chopping of the tree. Are we following? Okay. Don't mind the drama, please. Too much drama, that's why. Thank you. Can you hear me better now? I hear myself better. Okay, so something else happens with this. We get the ease of future maintenance. Ease of future maintenance. Have you ever been in that situation where you know what the code does? I totally understand how this code works. I'm a dev, of course, but what I need is the why. I'm not interested in the what because I can read the code. I need to know why. Why did you do this? Why did you take path A and not path B? Why did you choose to schedule jobs instead of just polling? Dude, you could have polled every 5 minutes for this. Why do you have to schedule a job? I need to know why if I'm to improve this solution, right? DDD gives you that. Because with DDD, you can write the whys. You can explore all the viable solutions. And then anybody who comes after you, this is better, anybody who comes after you can say, I need to know how this works. I need to know why they did this. And they go straight to the doc. And then they understand, oh, we were optimizing for precision, not eventual consistency. All this information is actually necessary. You can say, no, I'll just find who did it. What if you find him and he says this? What if you do find that person and he's like, I'm like that sometimes. I don't know, is it just me? 2 weeks after, I'm like, I wrote that. I can't remember why. I'm sure there was a very good reason. Just give me some time to think. I'll remember. But I don't have to stress. You don't have to stress. If there was a document, that thing that we all love creating, the document. So, Theodore Roosevelt said, the more you know about the past, the better prepared you are for the future. So if we just take out the time to actually document, we don't just improve the X for ourselves, we improve it for those who would actually need to improve things after we are gone, or even if it's while we are there. They save time, we save time. Everybody's happy. The X is good. Yay! So now we've seen effective collaboration and a faster feedback loop, accelerated development, and ease of future maintenance. So let's say you're at that point where you say, AB, I agree, yes, I agree. DDD is the way, yes. The next question would be, how? So how do I carry out this? How do I do this? I'm going to be showing us a real-life example of Factorial where I work currently to show how we carry out our implementations, development, whatever, via DDD. We do this via a concept called an RFC. In general, RFC means request for comments. At Factorial, an RFC is a document with which we share engineering decisions, implementations, and we receive feedback, iterate over them until we are sure that the solution that we propose actually solves the problem that we have. This problem could be a product one. It could also be a technical one. The most important thing is that an RFC is meant to trigger the right conversations towards the best solution. And interestingly, many times when those conversations actually start, you realize maybe this is not a problem worth solving at all. Have you ever been there? Where you're like, we need to go, we need to go, we need to solve this. And then 2 days after, you're like, nah, I don't think so. We'll live, we're still alive, we'll be good. So RFCs do that to us a lot, where this dev comes, he's new, he's like, we need to change things, we need to change how this works, we need to solve this problem. And we say, write an RFC. And he writes it down, and in the process of writing it down, he's like, nah. And you see this status. I'll show us one of it. When you go to our dashboard, what you see is how to write a good RFC and the RFC database. These are some of them. I filtered them by this quarter. I did this 2023, so last quarter. I filtered by last quarter, and you can see those in draft. These are those that are still writing their solution. Pursuing means we have started pursuing it. In progress means that we are actually implementing the solution that we proposed. In review means everybody's giving feedback now, and you can see that one, that status right there. Discarded, not necessary anymore. And you can see completed. These are those that we have pursued, we have implemented, and everything's done. At Factorial, you saw both pages, the DB and then how to create a good RFC. How to create a good RFC. If you click on that page, what you get is the RFC template. So I'm going to be taking us through the sections in our own templates and what they mean, how they work, and you can choose to adopt them if you want, but it's not perfect, but I'm just going to show you how we do it at Factorial. Before we start, let's assume that we all want to create one. I've been talking about post-scheduling or scheduling, so let's say we want to carry out post-scheduling. We all work at this beautiful company that allows users to create posts. So we would like users to be able to schedule posts, just like Slack or LinkedIn, where you can actually schedule posts. On YouTube, you can schedule videos, so something like that. The first thing your RFC should have is a descriptive title. In this case, what will it be? From what we've said, what do you think it could be? Post scheduling. Simple. That's fine. Nothing spectacular. So in our case, it will be post scheduling. And then it should have a forward. A forward is one sentence that just tells you exactly what this is about. So in our case, it could be something like, the purpose of this document is to create a system that actually allows users to schedule posts. Simple, nothing serious. Something that makes it possible for anybody who comes here to know exactly what this is about before they dig in. Now, the interesting part. Motivation. This is where a lot of people get stuck, and this is that point where many people find out that, no, this is not worth pursuing at all. Why do you want to solve this problem? What exactly is the pain you are trying to solve? What exactly? This is where you have to practically explain it to yourself, because if you can't, that means you don't even understand the problem you're trying to solve. And understanding a problem is necessary for getting the best solutions. In our case, what would that be? Who can tell me one thing? What's one pain that post-scheduling can solve? I'll call names. I'm that dramatic. Why do you think anyone would want to schedule posts? Thank you. We love our users so much, we don't want them to stay up at night. Birthday posts, 12 a.m., we want them to go live, and we don't want to have them on their phones or on their system. So we're trying to help the users, right? That's a very valid motivation. And then after that, we go to the background. The background is actually, what is the state of the world now in the context of what you're trying to solve? Not the state of the world. The state of the world in the context of what you are trying to solve at this point. This is where you talk about DB schemas, current ones, race conditions, necessary dependencies and unnecessary dependencies. Basically, you are describing how advantageous you are towards solving this or how disadvantageous you are, the position where you are. In our case, it could be that we have just two tables, background, users, first name, last name, and post author ID and text. This is necessary because whoever is going to collaborate with you, whoever comes here, can actually know where you are at this point. That helps them to understand the solution that you are proposing. You can't just say, hey guys, help me out, check this code, and there's code. We don't know where we are coming from, we don't know where we're going. So the background is very, very important. Also, one thing we should know is, I don't know if it's a fact, but developers don't like to read a lot of text. Is that true? Is it a fact? Agreed. So let's go diagrams. More diagrams. I believe that's how our brains work, mostly. We don't like so much text. So at this point, go diagrams, diagrams, diagrams. And then the next thing is implementation. I'm going to skip this part and go to the next part, and then I'll explain why. I'll go back here. This is actually how I write my RFCs. After the background, I skip implementation and I go to the success criteria, because it helps me see where we are and where we are actually going. So what do you want to achieve? This helps everyone who's going to collaborate with you. At what point would you say that my solution is successful? Has anybody here ever been able to edit their scheduled posts on LinkedIn? Maybe it's just me. I've never been able to find the button. It's possible that it's just me, because it would not be weird if I couldn't find it and it's there. Is there any other person who has been able to edit their scheduled posts on LinkedIn? Okay, what about Slack? Slack, I've been able to do that a lot. So let's say we have LinkedIn who supposedly cannot edit scheduled posts, supposedly, because maybe it's just me, and Slack that can edit them. The success criteria will be very different in both cases, and this affects the implementation. Because if you can't edit it, maybe we're not saving it anywhere. It's possible. Maybe we are not. So it's important that you state the success criteria. It helps us know what we are trying to achieve, so that anybody who comes sees where we are, where we're going, and then we go back to the implementation, which is, how are we going to go from the background to success? How are we going to go from the desert to the promised land, basically? So this is where you then state out step by step how you're going to implement your solution. Pseudocode works here. Pseudocode works perfectly here. I want to state that DDD is not just an approach for coding, for solutions that involve writing lines of code. It could be that the problem or what we're trying to achieve is moving everybody from the cloud to earth. Or we want to move from our local dev to Gitpod. Why? Because it takes 3 days to onboard a new dev. Maybe. But then implementation would then involve whatever you need, having your gitpod.yaml file and blah, 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 all the things that you need that will come up here. So let's not think that this is an approach just for solutions that involve writing lines of code. No, you could apply this to your life as well. DDD, it works, basically, at every point in time, however you choose to apply it. So this is exactly how we go through this at Factorial. And I hope that with these few points of mine, I've been able to convince you that DDD actually is the way. I missed this part. When you are talking about implementation, it's important that if your schemas are changing, you show that they're actually changing. You have a way to say that this was where we are and I've added new stuff. So for me, at this point, I use the green, but it could be anything, so that it's easy for whoever is actually collaborating with you to know that this changed. So yeah, this is what we have, and there was a GitHub research that was done recently, and I'm going to be taking a few points from there that are valid to what we're discussing right now. The first point from that report was high code understanding links to 42% greater productivity. Good documentation, training, and contextual awareness enable developers to work efficiently. That's 42% greater productivity if people can have a high code understanding. I want to challenge this and say that high code understanding doesn't just come from the code. It involves a lot of contextual awareness. So not just the whats, but the whys. That's how you get deep understanding of a code base. And so, as we can see, this is 42% greater productivity. The next one is faster feedback loops drive 20% higher innovation. Rapid collaboration and build cycles accelerate development. We already talked about that previously. And how that with DDD you get a faster feedback loop. And so that could give us 20% higher innovation. Quick answers to questions. I like this one a lot. Quick answers to questions cut technical debt by 50%. Comprehensive documentation prevents duplication of efforts. I'm going to ask us a question right here. What's the quickest way to get questions answered? What's the quickest way? Asking a dev. I remember that during the break, after he spoke, I saw like people wanting to ask him questions. And let's say 5 of us intended to ask him a question. We would have to wait in line, no? But imagine there was documentation. 100 of us could find answers to our questions at the same time. And he'll not be stressed. He won't have to talk to 50 people. So, DDD actually makes it possible for us to cut technical debt by 50% because with it we get the quickest answers to our questions. And then we don't, I think it was Maxime who talked about the flow state. If you adopt DDD and you do it well, maybe I should have added that point here, but I didn't know that he would say it, and I just got it when he said it. You wouldn't have to take developers out of the flow state, right? To say, hey, I just want to ask you a question. Nah, documentation. Yes, it's not about the what. I just wanted to know why you implemented this. Documentation. And so the X goes up. developer experience actually does get better if we embrace documentation-driven development. I hope that with these few points of mine, I've been able to convince you that this is the way. I'm going to end by saying DDD is not just an art of storytelling. It's not just us saying, this is where we are, this is where we're going, and now this is how we're going to get there. No, it's not just an art of storytelling. It's actually the architecture for innovation, where every word in that narrative not only helps to build a foundation for an exceptional solution because you get to iterate, but it also serves as a timeless reference, ensuring contextual awareness for years to come. Any question? Wow. Okay. That video was a prophecy. Questions? Please, you can leave feedback.
Well, they shouldn't have questions because they should just check your documentation, right?
Yes.
So shall we just move on, or I'm kidding? Who has questions?
Thank you, very interesting. I would like to know a bit more about the scope of the RFCs and how long do they typically, the implementation typically lasts? Is like something like a week, a month, 6 months? And then, because sometimes development is also about discovery, you cannot always know as well, in advance everything. So how often does it happen that what you wrote in the RFC doesn't actually get implemented exactly the same that way? And then what value remains of that RFC in those cases? Do you go back and fix it? Do you leave it that way? Thank you.
Amazing, amazing question. So let me start with the first, which is how long is the implementation of an RFC? There's no fixed time, but it always helps for developers to time box themselves. So we can say that we want to carry out the implementation of post-scheduling, and we'll spend 2 days writing an RFC. That's it. So if this would require longer time, there must be a very good reason, and it will be stated, because we don't have all the time in the world. So we time box ourselves, and since it's a tool for collaboration, everybody gives feedback pretty quickly, and we iterate. Did I answer the first question? Oh, the implementation. Depending on what you want to implement, there are times when, like for the data table that I built, the implementation took about maybe a whole quarter, because we had to do sorting, filtering, search, pagination, and exports. But all of those had their different sections in the RFC, and there were points where, for export, I had to create a different RFC because it wasn't related to the entire GraphQL implementation, which had to do with pagination, sorting, filtering, and search. So it depends on the scope of what you're trying to achieve. So the second question was, how often does it happen that we encounter situations where what we intended to do is not what we eventually discovered? Okay, so it's usually necessary that discoveries take place before your RFC. And discoveries, sometimes, if it's a product or a feature, if it's related to a product, discoveries happen before, and we are sure that that's what we want to do before we go write an RFC. Nevertheless, this does not rule out the fact that there are times where we are sure that this is what we want to do, and we put in the work and create the RFC. Sometimes we even start implementation and we change direction entirely. We discard it. Status, discarded. I think there were 3 questions. What was the third one? It depends. There are times when it's just that some certain details have changed. You just tweak it. You don't need to discard it. But if we are not doing that entirely, there's no need. You just discard it. You just change the status to discarded. These things happen even in products discoveries where you say, okay, like maybe for backstage, I'm just using them as an example because I can see him is in front, where you say, this is what we're going to do, and then you start trying to implement it, and over time you realize, maybe not, and you just don't. I think he was first.
Who was first?
Oh, thank you. By the way, great talk. So you kind of already answered my question, the question I'm about to ask, but do you have any other tips for avoiding losing agility while implementing the RFC?
Yeah, perfect question. Yeah. Developers want to go fast. We always want to go fast. We don't want to lose time. And that's the truth. What we do at Factorial, in order not to lose agility, is, as I said, you time box yourself. You don't say, oh, I'm waiting for the feedback from the whole world, and you're just there waiting for feedback. No. You time box yourself because you can never get the perfect solution. So it must be something that you are proud of. This is something that we actually insist on. The quality of your proposal at the last point should be something you are proud of, such that if you have to iterate over it later, it's not like you have to trash the whole thing. So that's how we ensure agility. Did I answer your question? Okay. Wow, so many questions.
Hi, thanks.
Last question, sorry.
Okay, just a quick one. The more the documentation tends to grow, the more friction there is in searching inside the documentation and finding the right answers. How do you keep code and the right documentation linked together so that from code analysis, I can jump directly straight to the meaningful part of the documentation?
Okay, so what we have is that we have a huge monolith, but we have components within each of them, and all of these components have their README that describes exactly what they do, and within those READMEs, you should have a link to the RFCs within them. That's how we ensure that. Please, one last question.
There's no documentation about it. What was the last question? Who wants to ask the last question?
Oh,
nice.
And did I answer it? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abi. Dan?